Holy football season, Batman. We are fully underway here. I had to go with the
So
corny,
it's
Batman
so
moment.
corny. It's so
But
corny.
what made me think of that was just the level of violence that Batman brings as a superhero matched with the level of violence that an NFL player brings, but especially one Aaron Donald, if you've seen the video that has surfaced. Because my God,
that got me so good.
it was so if you haven't seen it, please go to Twitter. You could probably find it pretty easily. It's like uh, he got caught on a camera. Obviously, NFL Network has had their cameras at every training camp, and so they have it rolling for the entirety of all of these camps. And you could just see Aaron Donald over by the sidelines. One of his teammates comes up. I don't even know which teammate it was, a lineman, and Aaron Donald grabs him by the throat. The lineman seems to understand what's happening here, and so he stands pat. And then he proceeds to do this weird drill where he just like pushes his neck back like about 5 yards of shimmying, and then does like a little bit swim move to end it. And I'm like, what the heck is this?
It looked like the Undertaker training for choke slams. Like, I don't know what else to describe it for. I will just say, I saw one of the great like memes about it. I saw was like, congratulations, you made the practice squad for like the Los Angeles Rams. That's amazing.
Here's your prize.
What am I going to be doing? You're Aaron Donald's personal choke dummy. It's like, I mean, that's literally.
I'm trying to figure out what exactly that exercise perfects.
Well,
it must be something with obviously you want to extend your hands and get pad level with the offensive
some
lineman,
sort of explosion and giving resistance of just like feeling that, like creating that short burst, something like that. I don't know.
I feel like he could do that with just the pads.
Yeah, well, I'm not a coach, but you know what? If you're in that situation, you just do whatever the guy asks, and you say yes, sir, and whatever you need from me. And it is a good reminder, though. People get this nostalgia, and I think Hard Knocks, and remember, Hard Knocks starts soon. We got the Detroit Lions.
I completely forgot about Hard Knocks.
Detroit Lions, Hard Knocks. That's gonna be electric with Dan Campbell.
Fighting kneecaps all August.
Apparently Lions players have been signing kneecaps at practice.
Have they really?
It's gonna be electric. I can't wait. Poor Jared Goff.
They're actually for the first time in a long time, they're an exciting team, I think.
Yeah,
there are elements to them that I'm looking
forward to
watching.
I agree. But it's a reminder. But I think Hard Knocks, what it does sometimes is it paints this picture of like, Liev Schreiber's like, anyone can make the roster. You just got to perform. It's like, really, it's a 54-man roster. You have, 40, 45 of the spots in between there that are pretty much guaranteed going into the start of every season. You then have like 40 guys who are there basically fighting for like 10 spots. And most of those guys, especially like linemen and stuff, you may be fighting for one of the 10. You know what I mean? Like you're looking for like one offensive lineman, one defensive lineman, one wide receiver to add to the group they already have signed. But then those guys are all battling for those practice squad spots, those coveted 11 practice squad spots. So it is important. I mean, it just goes to show like how important it is, but also just how many guys will show up to a training camp and it's like your job for 2 weeks was to get choked by Aaron Donald, then you get cut. Like it's a brutal industry.
Like brutal. If that's the film he's able to put out there and just be like, look at I handled the 2-time defensive player of the year, Aaron Donald.
His choking drill.
Good stuff. Well, we have, my goodness, a stacked show today. And it's a good thing we did it on this Tuesday now that we think about it, because of all the stuff that came out today. And of course, the Watson suspension coming down yesterday. So we're going to touch on that. Of course, some big unfortunate news for Dolphins fans and for the Dolphins organization, as well as a few big money contracts for some wide receivers. And we'll end it with some quarterback battle talk that we've seen over the first week or so of training camp. So I'm excited to get into it. And obviously, this story is not one that we've enjoyed having to talk about.
No.
But We were saying much earlier on that we were going to touch on it when big developments came out, but we're going to kind of let it play itself out. And this also might not be the last leg of the Deshaun Watson story either. But Deshaun Watson officially suspended for 6 games to start the 2022 season. That ruling coming down from an appointed judge, Sue L. Robinson, a former federal judge. She was jointly appointed by the NFL and the Players Association to hear the case. Now, the important part about all of this is that the NFL brought 4 cases to this hearing earlier in July. So that is what she was going off of, despite having knowledge of the upwards of 2+ dozen accusations levied against Deshaun Watson. But she recommended a 6-game suspension, which of course seemed light to a lot of people, not just in the media field, but really across NFL fandom and elsewhere. Her main thing, Mark, was citing precedents for past nonviolent sexual misconduct cases.
Yeah.
I know that you've heard Kyle Brandt. I saw you tweet out kind of his response. I heard he had another great one today. I really like kind of how he has framed a lot of this, especially when he says, nonviolent. That's kind of a weird thing to say in these types of cases, because you understand what it means. There's a difference between physically assaulting someone versus implicit threats and things like that. But nonviolent sexual misconduct seems light for what we're talking about, because there is a guy using his platform as an NFL player to really not just make women uncomfortable, but put them in compromising situations that are non-consensual. So obviously the league was looking for a full year. They have now 2 days to appeal this decision. And it's important to remember, Roger Goodell still holds all the cards. This guy could put down any suspension of his choosing. The point of doing this was to hope to come to an agreement with the NFL Players Association, not draw this out and not have them sue the NFL back. That's where we're at right now. What were your initial thoughts on seeing the 6-game suspension being brought down by Sue L. Robinson?
Yeah, pretty shocked that it was just 6 games. I got to be honest. I mean, my whole thought, and I've said this from day one, was do a year and just make it clean and get it over with and move on. And it seems as though to me that new precedent needed to be set. You know what I mean? Like and I know you referenced the Roethlisberger issue and some of those things. Kyle Brandt, I think, said it best when he was talking about it. It's like, well, that's one incident. And that was, as bad as that was. And, Big Ben it happened so early in his career, and his legacy has grown beyond it. And he settled everything he had to do with his, accuser and what happened in that situation. But all signs point to, like, in the end, you can at least say, like, that is someone who had a really bad night and maybe learn from it. You know what I mean? The same way that you could argue a person who gets a DUI or something like that, it's one horrific mistake. It doesn't define who they are in their character. And, it's not like Ben Roethlisberger every year was dealing with, another bar incident where he was, and a woman's accused him of something. Now, again, a lot in these situations is one is too many times, and one's doing something, anything like Ben did or anything. It's horrific in its own nature. And so, again, the precedent thing really bothered me, because especially with Deshaun Watson, we talk about how his contract that he just signed set a new precedent, which reset the market. You know what I mean? So I just think that I don't think the NFL did a good enough job of levying power with the judge, of saying, this is something, we need you to kind of take out of our hands, and it needs to be, it needs to be severe in its nature. And I got to be honest, I'm shocked the judge ruled in as little as she did. I think one of the hard things about this case is, we said from the beginning, as soon as we realized there was going to be no criminal charges, I mean, it's tough. We live in a country where you're innocent until proven guilty. And we fight for that right in society, because every one of us wants to be able to say, hey, if I'm accused of something that I know in my heart of hearts I did not do, and I, have proof or whatever can back it up, that, you are innocent until you're proven guilty. But with Deshaun Watson, I mean, it's so obvious. This is someone, going back to what I was saying with Ben with the one night thing, this is behavior. This is a man who was getting away with things and kept doing it. They talk about again, this is maybe a bad comparison, but John Wayne Gacy is a serial killer. If you watch that documentary on Netflix about him, which I did, one of the things they talk about is once he got away with it once or twice, he almost that feeling of invincibility. Like, I can do this. I now have the platform to do this. And it's certainly, and that's where the serialness of it comes in. Serial killer, the doing it more than once.
And it feed off of that ability to get away with it.
And with Deshaun Watson, I mean, everything points to a guy that got away with it and was able to realize, oh, this is something I enjoy doing, and I'm doing it, you know what I mean, more and more and more and more. And we've seen it with coming out with the numbers that happen. Listen, I think in the end, I think it's too little of a sentence. I would fight for a year. The NFL wanted an indefinite to at least a year suspension. I think that's saving them a little bit in this situation of them being able to say, we recommended a year at least with an indefinite and let the commissioner decide. And she went with 6 games. And I think the NFL is in a really tight spot. But I think the Roger Goodell has to push to make this a larger, try to get it up to 8 or 9 games and have a meeting with Deshaun Watson. His people be like, you got really lucky here that they went 6. And that's the lowest end of, it's what apparently Deshaun's camp was saying. They'd be happy 6 to 8. The NFL, if they try to go a year, that the NFLPA and Deshaun Watson, his people, are going to challenge that. He's going to be able to play week 1 as it goes through all its arbitration. And just like Tom Brady, when he challenged his suspension, remember, he ended up playing the whole year. And then he wasn't suspended for those 4 games where Jimmy G played for Deflategate until the year after, because he played that whole year as they were in court fighting the suspension. The NFL doesn't want that with Deshaun Watson. So I think the smartest thing the NFL can do from here would be to try to negotiate with Deshaun and his people in the Player Association on, we're going to extend this to 8 games, add some more, get it half of the season, maybe 9. Don't fight it. And we won't touch your money. We won't, you know what I mean? We'll give you some breaks somewhere else. But 6 is just so light, Dan. It's so light. It just doesn't sit well at all, especially when you see the Ridley suspension and all the other countless things you can combat it against. And, the precedent for the Ray Rices and the Ben Roethlisbergers, you got to reset the precedent for this. Anything involving accusations of sexual violence or physical violence against women or any other person of an NFL player, the new precedent has to be a year, a suspension or something like that.
Yeah, it has to be severe. And that's the whole point, is that it's a unique situation. There is no precedence for this particular thing. 24 accusers is a mind-boggling number. And not just that, but just the nature of the case in general. And the NFL argued that, and Robinson said that the NFL met their burden of proof. So all of that is just strange because of the conclusions that she came to, including determining that, Watson was predatory in his behavior.
Yeah.
That these accusations did carry weight to them, to the point where she was convinced in a court setting that, this misconduct did take place. And so it's important to remember, this is not a criminal procedure. So no one's saying that he committed crimes and felonies. They're saying he did not live up to the personal conduct policy of the
which is in every
place
contract
in which he works.
Yeah.
And so really that place should be able to put down a suspension that they see fit for those rules. And I would argue as well, to kind of your point at the end there about Calvin Ridley getting a year and $11 million off of his, contract for gambling, DeAndre Hopkins getting 6 games and, X number of $1 million off of his contract for the year, for the PEDs, just trace amounts. If this is all according to the proper procedures of the personal conduct policy, then there's a big issue with the personal conduct policy.
Yeah, agreed.
If a guy smoking weed is as big of an offense as someone sexually harassing and in some cases assaulting, massage therapists in the dozens, then we've got a real issue here with how things are laid out. So that might be even more of the problem here with some of this precedent stuff, is the fact that they need to have better wording, and they need to cut the crap with this, small time issues such as marijuana, for instance, and really focus on
Great
some of
point.
the bigger issues that are domestic violence and sexual assault and harassment and things of that nature. So that to me is what stood out the most. As we mentioned, the NFL probably will appeal, and by them appealing, it's more like they can also just choose to put down a suspension of their own. So we'll wait to see if that happens, but it's got to happen within the next couple days.
Yep.
And really, the final thing to put a bow on this in terms of the punitive nature of this that's really upsetting is that, and we knew this going into it, that Cleveland structured his contract in such that it would favor Deshaun should a suspension come down. And that's exactly what we're seeing right now. He was set to earn $46 million this year. He will make 45 of that with the suspension intact. He is only going to miss out on $345,000 because he's only making $1 million base salary this year. The 45 million was all in signing bonus the league cannot touch. That's obviously upsetting and concerning, as well as that the guy is really, after sitting out a full season, you just have to sit in an extra 6 games and you're good to go, man. That's essentially what they're telling him.
And the shadier thing to that too is, you knew that the goal for Deshaun Watson's camp was really to settle a lot of these things, to never actually have to go to court. And so part of that signing bonus was he's got all this money now to settle all these things out of court. You know what I mean? Because what a settlement is here you go, here's a check. And I apologize, I guess, for whatever you think I did to you. And this is enough money for it to have healed whatever wounds that it's not worth it to take you to court over. And so, that's what is also shady about this. I think the NFL has a little leverage in the sense that if they go to Deshaun and his people and say, we're adding 2 to 3 games, we're going to get it to 8 or 9, or we're going to do the whole season and you should not challenge it, is it that they have the leverage of saying, fine, if you challenge it and you appeal the suspension, Deshaun, like Tom Brady did, and you play this whole year, and then eventually our suspension will get upheld because we're the NFL, we make the rules, you'll be suspended all of next year, and next year is the year when you actually make money in your contract. You know what I mean? Like, those are when those game checks matter if he's missing time next year. So you can kind of leverage this contract against him as well and hopefully get Deshaun to agree to missing more games or a whole year, because this is the year that he's already made his money in the signing bonus. You're going to only lose $1 million if you don't play football this year, where you'll stand to lose $46 million if you miss the whole year next year. So the NFL might be able to leverage that against him and say, you don't want to go down this road. Do not appeal this suspension because you know exactly what's going to happen. Just like Tom Brady, only difference was Tom was going to miss game checks either way because he makes the same money, unlike Deshaun Watson's contract. So that's maybe the silver lining, that the NFL has that trump card to play. And I think it was smart for the NFL and the NFLPA to go to a mediator and say, hopefully we'd go to a neutral party, a judge, and a judge can just basically settle this for us, and then everyone's happy. But of course, a female judge, and I don't mean to, be despairing, but you'd think like more of the gravity of the situation, what Deshaun did, would lean towards favoring the NFL. And she totally favored Deshaun. And Deshaun's people apparently asked the judge for high end of 6 to 8 games, and she wins 6. And so it puts everyone in a real bad spot. If the judge had just gone
putting in games, that I'm sorry to cut you off, but putting in that stipulation at the end there as well, that he is mandated to only use team provided massage therapists.
Basically,
I mean, it's basically her admitting like there's a problem and like we need to keep him away from, the other massage therapists in his community. It's signaling that there's still, big concerns here. And it was strange just to see it come down that way.
I think if the judge had simply gone 8 games, we all would have said it's a little light, but the NFL, I mean, you know what I mean? You kind of move on from it. But there's just something about that 6 games, and it's such a little, especially
well,
you
yeah,
add this
less than half,
Well, yeah, you add in the 17 game season, and so it just feels so not enough for a guy in the end who we pretty much know he committed crimes. He's not going to be charged for those crimes because of the NDAs and his own shady behavior and basically stripping away the rights of these women if they went to court to try to prove any of the crimes he committed. Unless they had secret cameras, but even then, I don't know if that would count as admissible evidence in court.
They're in a tough spot in terms of, proving.
It's basically a he said, she said between these, more than 24 women and him. Because the way they handled everything and, stripped the rights and did all this, and the other with the NDAs. So these victims were really in a tough spot. And in the end, I don't blame any of them for just saying, I can reset my life and walk away from this trauma and move on and walk away with a nice, I'm sure, chunk of money from this guy. And that hurts him. That you get him back in some way, shape, or form. It hits his bank account and that stings. And so I don't blame them for doing that. But in the end, as soon as this wasn't going to be a criminal charges against Deshaun, we knew it could end up being really sticky and a tough situation. And then there are some people out there and they have every right to feel that this is maybe too many games or the perfect amount of games. I'd love to hear them try to make the case for it. The majority of the people I trust and I follow in the media and who have thoughts on this and people I've talked to all agree it's too little. We're not saying that his NFL career should be completely over, but you know what I mean? This is Michael Vick served his time and was able to get back in the league. You can't send him to jail because of the way this all worked out, but it should almost feel like a 2 years away from the NFL last year and this year would have felt at least a little bit more appropriate, especially the fact that he got that giant contract and we know he's going to be set for life.
Yeah, he's certainly set. And right now, if everything stands, he is set to see his first game action as a Cleveland Brown late August or October, against the Baltimore Ravens. So
yep.
Jacoby Brissett in the interim will be their quarterback. And, they could be 4-2 at that point. And so the Browns are going to be
an easy schedule,
probably right in the thick of things. Should Deshaun come in week 7 and play for them the rest of the year.
Can I ask you really quick, just down to football, do you expect Deshaun to play at all in the preseason? If you're Kevin Stefanski, how do you handle that? You say to yourself, the guy hasn't played competitive football in over a calendar year. He's not going to play for another 6 weeks.
Yeah, you probably do want to get him.
Do you risk him getting tweaked and injured? You know what I mean? And I also wonder,
well, if he does get injured, you have 6 weeks of recovery.
Yes. I don't think we'll see him at all. I think they're going to run with Jacoby Brissett. You get him as much time and ready to go. And they're going to try their damnedest to be 3-3 by the time he gets back. I wonder, honestly, how a lot of guys, the Cleveland guys, I'm sure, are trying to support Deshaun and they want to win football games. But you got to think, if you're Ravens, you're some of these other guys in these locker rooms, these defensive linemen. I'm not trying to say, bounty gate or anything like that.
No, but they're going to be motivated to get after him.
I think there's a lot of guys in the NFL who have daughters, who have wives, who have people who are just like us, sickened by the story and what they heard, who are very excited to maybe get a sack and a hit on Deshaun Watson.
Yep, that's for sure. To some news that dropped today, Mark, as the bombshells keep on coming, the NFL dropped a bomb on the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah.
As they have, they've been punished for violating integrity of the game rules and conduct in the NFL protocols there. And the team will now have to forfeit its 2023 first-round draft pick, as well as its 2024 third-round draft pick. Owner Stephen Ross has been suspended through October 17th. So that means he can't be present at any of the team facilities, any of the events. He's also fined $1.5 million. This is all stemming from them finding that tampering violations of, quote, unprecedented scope and severity, the league said. This had to do with the story, Mark, that we were talking right before we went on here that really just kind of went under the radar at the time that it came out. We touched on it briefly. but that the team had communication with Tom Brady to get him either to come and play quarterback for the Miami Dolphins or to actually be a part owner and take part in the front office of the Miami Dolphins, and then also to get Sean Payton to leave the New Orleans Saints and come be the head coach of the Miami Dolphins. Of course, this is wildly against the league rules. For players and coaches that are currently under contract, you're not allowed to be in communication with them regarding any sort of employment. So, a couple of the quick findings here, and then we'll discuss the team. They found that the team had impermissible communication with Tom as early as August of 2019. He was still with the Patriots at that point, and throughout that entire season, his final year in New England. And then they also had contact with him in 2021 with the Bucks, and made contact with him throughout that season as well. So 2 seasons under contract with 2 different teams trying to lure Tom to come to Miami. They also had communication with Peyton's agent, which is also Tom's agent as well, in January of this year, despite not asking New Orleans for permission, which you're mandated to ask the team for permission to interview or speak to their employee. This was all, of course, prior to Sean Payton's retirement announcement earlier this year. So we'll touch on that first, and then we'll get to the Brian Flores aspect of this, because that's a little bit less in terms of what they came down on the team for. But those initial tampering things, that now that we think about, like, that's a big deal. That's a big deal.
It is. Well, I think of it this way: does the punishment fit the crime? If they would have gotten Sean Payton and Tom Brady, and it all worked out, right?
Yeah.
It would be,
that would have been worth it.
It would have been very much losing 2 picks and $1 million for your billionaire owner for. So I think listen, if you're a Dolphins fan, you're beyond furious, because this is a team that's on the rise. You're having some things going your way. You like the sound bites from your new young kind of out there head coach. You love the new highlight of Tua throwing a 65-yard bomb to Tyreek Hill. And the last thing a team like this that's on the rise needs is to lose 2 potential starters. You know what I mean? A first round pick next year and a 3rd round pick in the following year. I mean, those are legitimate draft picks. I'll just say this. It is one of those stories where I don't know what else. I mean, maybe a larger fine against the owner I would have liked to seen, because again, it stems from him. And it stems from his willingness to basically be like, all right, I'm going to skirt the rules. Because, again, if you're talking about setting precedent, I think many owners would say, if you could give me the quarterback I want and the coach I want, and all I have to give up for it is 2 picks and $1 million fine, I don't know what organization wouldn't do that. So you again, where's the kind of precedent on this? And I think part of the reason why there's still punishment to come, depending on the Brian Flores, some of the stuff from that situation. So maybe that's part of it. I'm not 100% sure how it's all going to play out, but I'd be pissed if I'm a Dolphins fan, because those mean something to me as a team that has some momentum going and some positive vibes around them in the really tough AFC. And this hurts, but it also does hurt in general, because you can't even cheat right. You end up paying these fines and you didn't get. Yeah,
that's why I tweeted out. I was like, and they didn't get Tom or Payton.
Yeah, so again, it's a little bit of a moot point. If you would have gotten the guys, the fine, whatever, you don't care. You didn't get it. It didn't work out, and you're getting fined for it. It's just like a bruise. It's like the guy who comes into work and he's still got, like, you could tell that something embarrassing has happened to him. He's got that like cut in his face, and you're like, dude, you work at like a sales job, and it's like, why were you out partying till like 2 a.m. on a Tuesday, and you show up, looking a little beat up because the stripper like smacked you in the face? Like, dude, that's embarrassing. Like, we all know you're a little bit of a joke here. Like, that's what the Dolphins feel like right now in the NFL circles. Like, this is just, it's a black eye. It's embarrassing because you couldn't even cheat right in this sense, and you're paying a hefty price as far as it goes from a fan base, as far as winning and building your franchise.
And of course, the Brian Flores lawsuit against the team is still going on, and I feel that he had he was validated in some aspects of this, and I think that's, it's ironic because the NFL is the one that did the investigation into this situation and came to the findings. And these findings might aid Brian Flores in his lawsuit against the NFL coming up here shortly, because, of course, Flores levied accusations against the owner, Stephen Ross, for offering to pay him money up to $100,000, I believe it was, per loss, so that the team could tank and get a higher draft pick in 2020. Now, the league in this investigation said they found no evidence of, formal offers being made in terms of, money for losses and for tanking. However, they did find proof that Ross, strongly indicated his desire to put tanking and losing as a higher priority than winning, so that the draft picks would become the number one asset for that team the following offseason. So much so that they also found that Brian Flores credibly brought these concerns to other members of the executives, who then, tried to comfort Flores and tell him, no, Ross is on your side. He doesn't want you to tank, blah, 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 kind of paying lip service on behalf of their owner. So Flores, at least outside of the money thing, we know Flores was telling the truth in terms of what the mindset was like in that front office and what kind of pressures were being put on. And the league said, it very well could have been a joke, but it's not up to Flores to determine what's a joke. So they did commend him for continuing to win. And they had some big wins late in that season as well. But, honestly, that's a little bit of hogwash. In terms of the joking thing, like, Flores seems like a guy to me who, yes, rough around the edges, very serious dude. He also strikes me as someone who's been around a lot of people in his life and would be able to tell whether something is said in jest or whether it's a nudge. There's some serious undertones to it as well.
Well, and again, it comes back to it's a little bit of he said, in the sense that Flores is saying he did this. The NFL saying, listen, it looks like, you're right, he did do this, but he's just going to sit there and say, come on, we're just messing around. Of course I want my team to win, and you're not going to be able to prove it. But what the NFL is basically saying is, listen up, owners. This is BS. Like this, you're literally, the integrity of our league and the idea that every team is trying to win is paramount for our gambling, for all these other partnerships, for the stability of fans and like rooting interest. Every team has to be committed to winning every year. Now, certain teams aren't going to win the Super Bowl, and every sports league understands that, from, even the EPL, like what was the big thing when Leicester City won? It's like, well, it was a miracle, but like you went into the season thinking, they're not going to win. But that has nothing to do with the fact that it's not like we're trying not to win. You just know there are certain quarterbacks who are more talented than others, certain coaches more talented than others. And depending on where they're at, you feel better about a team's chances of winning or not. The Lions could win the Super Bowl this year. The Lions are actively, it seems like, trying to win the Super Bowl. That seems like their goal. The Dolphins, and any owner who alludes to the fact that tanking is more important, is not good. And I would say, like, the Falcons, like, it's tough. Like, we talk about the Falcons, like, it appears as though the Falcons are not trying to win many games this year. It appears as though the Seahawks are not trying to win many games this year. But they're not actively saying to their coaching staff and to all these other things like, we are going to try to lose and anything like that. They're teams that the quarterbacks they're starting and the way they're heading into a season, it appears as though they're saying, listen, this is a reset season for us, and we need to see some things from certain people. But, that's what's so stupid about this as well, is we as fans all understand that the NFL understands that happens. But if you're stupid enough as the owner to actually say that to your head coach, a guy that you should know is a really serious dude. Brian Flores comes off as a no-nonsense, Mike Tomlin coaching tree-esque kind of guy where it's like, extraordinarily by the book, serious. I mean, he's a Bill Belichick guy, for crying out loud. That you're going to go up to him like, you want $100,000, just lose the next 3 games? I'll give you $300,000 if you lose the next 3 games.
Like, excuse me?
Yeah, like that. You got to be smart. So Ross deserves the black eye, the embarrassment. Go back to the weird metaphor I made. like that is what I'm saying is the NFL's trying to make this a big deal to announce the rest of the league. Like, we will find you, we will call you out and embarrass you, and your fan base is going to be pissed as hell. And the Dolphins fans are, because their owner pretty much seems incompetent. They should sell the team to Tom Brady.
And frankly, I don't think the guy he cares that much. I mean, what is he, like 85? He's in Miami. He owns the Dolphins. Like, what does he care? $1.5 million, to your point too, is 0.0001% of his total worth. I mean, it's like, oh, I can't be around till October 17th. I guess I'll just go party on my yacht for a couple months and watch the games from there.
Like he's very involved anyways. Yeah.
Like, does he even know who Tyreek Hill is? Like, who knows? I don't know. Might not. We had some big contracts come down over the past couple of days. We did. Mark. The Seattle Seahawks signed DK Metcalf to a 3-year, $72 million extension with $58.2 million guaranteed. Yeah. And it came with about a $30 million signing bonus. So a big guarantees for DK Metcalf for sure. This deal was strange to me, though, from Seattle's standpoint.
Completely strange, yes.
DK, I get it. Like, yeah, absolutely, man. You signed a 3-year huge guarantee deal, and you're going to be a free agent by the age of 27 or whatever. Do it. Awesome. From Seattle, this makes no sense. This is your rebuilding window, and you're paying 3 years, $72 million for a prime playmaker on offense. You're going to hurt yourself in the cap in the interim while you're rebuilding. You don't even have your franchise quarterback yet.
Yeah.
It's a very bizarre situation, unless they really, like, if they were confident that they're going to just have this guy long-term eventually, then like an 8-year deal would have made sense here for me. Like, just make this like a max 7-year deal.
Yeah.
To lock him up for the long-term so that you can get through this rebuild. He's going to be entering free agency right as they're prepared to win again.
It is weird. It's almost like they knew that the Dolphins thing was coming down, and they're trying to show the league, no, we're not tanking. Sign DK. We brought in with DK's back. We're not tanking. Don't yell at us for tanking. That's what it seems like, because
and the league will come back and say you have Drew Lock as quarterback.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You nailed it. It is a weird time frame. The Seahawks are not going to be good until 4 years from now, probably. And DK Metcalf is with them this year, next year, and the following year, not 4 years from now. But I do think what the only thing I can make sense of this is two things. For DK, yes, he gets to take another big bite of the apple when he's 28. He'll be, firmly in his prime, if not the back end of his prime, but he will be, if he continues on his trend, still a big receiving target. He could be still a huge asset for a team that's ready to maybe win now. And you could sign money when the cap is going to even grow. Yeah. And the cap is going to keep growing, over the next couple of years. So he's got more money coming his way if he can stay healthy and be productive. But if not, at least it locks him up, guaranteed money, really, really incredible money. It's not the hundreds of $1 million, generational wealth type money, but really good money that him and his family should be fine for the rest of his life if he invests it well and all that type of stuff. But
I mean, even if he doesn't, I mean, you can mess up with like 20 million of that and still have 38 million left.
Yeah, you still be in not terrible shape. But I think the other thing is maybe Seattle really does have a plan for either Drew Lock. Maybe they really do see something in Drew Lock and they want to give Drew Lock the chance. And in order to give him a fair chance, you have to give him DK Metcalf. Or they say to themselves, we need DK to try to make sure we can attract the free agent quarterback we want next year. You know what I mean? Or if Seattle's very confident that we're going to get one of the top 2 or 3 quarterbacks in the draft next year, he comes in and immediately has DK Metcalf for a year. Hopefully they create that bond. They have that second year with DK, and then DK wants to stay. So it's got to be one of those two type of things, that if you're DK, he may not wanted the long-term deal. He wanted the big guarantees. I'll stick with you through this one bad year. Maybe they sold him on whatever plan I just said and saying, hey, we're going to go after Aaron Rodgers next year. We're going to go after insert name here, and we're going to try to be big players. We got a ton of first-round picks, a ton of assets. We're going to get aggressive in the quarterback market next year. Or or maybe they said, whether it's a rookie, whatever it may be. So that's the only thing that kind of makes sense to me, but great for DK. And clearly the Seahawks are trying to avoid the tanking penalties from the NFL.
Yeah, and maybe they were worried that Deebo Samuel was going to walk and that the 49ers were going to scoop up DK from them.
Oh, yeah, that would be bad.
Possibility too. But yeah, I mean, Deebo did get locked up by San Fran just a day later, and pretty much the same deal, very close.
Yeah.
3 years, $73.5 million.
And they're very comparable players, in my opinion.
They are. They're big. Obviously Deebo does more on the ground game, but they're big, physical, strong dudes. Great after the catch. Yeah, so his is a $73.5 million extension, 58.1 guaranteed, so 0.1 less than DK Metcalf. But there are incentives baked into this, and they're very small incentives, which is interesting. So this was clear to me that obviously we knew that Deebo was arguing that he plays two positions, so he wanted to get guaranteed money and wanted to get peace of mind knowing that he's being used as a running back and as a wide receiver, and the shelf life is a lot smaller, shorter.
Well, he got more money.
So he got the money, and they put in there as like a cherry on top. Each season he can make up to $650,000 for reaching 380 yards on the ground and $150K for 3 touchdowns on the ground as well.
Yeah.
So he's likely to meet one of those two each year, if not both.
Yeah.
And this kind of says to me that the 49ers are saying, because that's not a whole lot of money there for the incentives, that they're still planning on using him the same way. Like, we're fine with you reaching those incentives, and we're going to use you the same way. And it seems Debo's like, fine, I'll take that. 3 years, I get my guaranteed money. And we hope that after 3 years, I'm not, driven into the ground physically.
I mean, it's literally, it's almost $800 and something thousand extra a year to let us.
Well, so the thing is, he's only allowed to make up to 650. So if he gets the 380 yards rushing and the 3 touchdowns, he only gets the credit for the 380 yards rushing. It's a weird.
Well, whatever. I mean, still though, it's good extra money for him to say at least that's an incentive. I mean, that the money Deebo got is more than any running back got. And it's not, but it's not.
Le'Veon Bell would have loved to get that.
Yeah, it's not nearly what the top wide receivers get. But I don't think anyone would argue that Deebo's value, his most value, is the fact that he's versatile. He's not DeAndre Hopkins. He is not just an elite wide receiver. He's not Justin Jefferson. He's not Jamar Chase. So he's brilliant as an all-tool athlete and a unique piece in that offense. And again, I think it's a contract that makes a ton of sense. And I tweeted it out. I knew this deal as soon as they named Trey Lance the starter would get done. This is what you do. When you're paying your quarterback nothing because they're on the rookie deal, make sure all his weapons get paid and you pay weapons to be around him. It's one of the frustrating things about how I feel about with the Bears right now is, like, I just don't feel like they've spent enough money when they're not paying Justin Fields anything. And that's partially because Ryan Pace put him in such a horrendous hole. But this is what the Niners are good at, right? They're going to go out and make sure that Trey Lance has a chance to succeed. And it's the same thing with the Seahawks. I didn't even mention it, but when you're paying Drew Lock nothing, you got to spend your money, and DK Metcalf is worth spending the money on. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. If you want your team to succeed, which we've talked about, they're in that championship window, even with Trey Lance at quarterback. And you could argue too that Deebo is most effective in this San Fran offense. We haven't seen him elsewhere. Yeah, but Kyle Shanahan just is so smart at scheming up things and getting people into space, and that's where Deebo thrives. Kittle's had his injuries. Yeah, Ayuk is talented but unproven ultimately. So you want to get a guy that has actually produced and to this point has relatively stayed healthy despite some injury troubles last year. But it's a good deal for both sides, I think, in this one. Maybe even more so for the 49ers. Yeah. But yeah, it's a solid deal all around. And then San Fran's just they're just going to be such an interesting storyline all year because, this is a team that 2 out of the last 3 years was in the NFC Championship game. One time they were in the Super Bowl, and
And now they're going through a quarterback change, and some of the pieces in that 3-year window that they had are older, more beat up, but also some new guys. They've lost their OC. They lost their defensive coordinator 2 years ago, Asala. So they're just an interesting, I don't yet know where to put my finger on the Niners. In the weaker NFC, they feel like a playoff team, but does that mean you're going to get 3 out of the NFC West? I don't know. I mean, it's just one of those things that I have to, the more we're talking about them right now, I just kept going to, in the next couple of weeks, we'll do our official predictions. And I'm a little lost on the Niners. I don't know yet how I feel about what they're going to look like this season as far as the whole, because Trey Lance is just such an unknown.
Yeah, it's a tough one to predict. I agree. The rest of the team is fairly intact, and you feel good about where they're at as a unit. But the quarterback is such an important role, and that's obviously a lot of question marks there with Trey Lance. So we'll see how he's able to do so far. And the good thing is that they have committed to something. If it was a thing where we're waiting around with Jimmy throughout the training camp, that would have just been the worst situation for Lance and for the 49ers.
Agreed.
They've committed to him. They're going with it, and they're going to ride it out, ride or die with Trey Lance as their quarterback.
Quick sidebar. I've already bet the Bears to cover the 6.5. They're for game 1 of the year. Niners at Bears, Soldier Field. Bears are getting 6.5 points at home, an offense that has never been seen. Trey Lance, I just thinking it's one of those things where the wind.
I struggle with that one. I don't know.
The wind off the leg. I just think that's one of those weird games where you look back. Remember when it was like who lost to the Jaguars in week 1? It was like Indy, or a couple of, like, those weird week 1 losses. Like the Titans got destroyed.
Well, hey, the Steelers beat the Bills week 1 last year.
Yeah. So things like that where you're like, wait a minute, what happened? I just have a feeling that's going to be one of those Justin Fields, maybe a late heroics. Trey Lance throws a pick late, and all of a sudden you're like, the Bears win, 19-16, and you're like, what the hell did we just watch in Chicago?
Who has better rushing production in that game would be an interesting.
That's going to be huge. It's going to be a big part.
Trey Lance.
It's going to be so. I just want to put that out there as we were talking about it. I've already put the money in on it. I feel good about it.
One final contract I want to discuss is a record-breaking deal that went down. Chris Boswell getting a 4-year, $20 million extension with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Ties him with Justin Tucker, highest paid kickers in NFL history, $12.5 million guaranteed, and gets a $20 million extension. This was awesome because I remember the trajectory of the search for a kicker in Pittsburgh. This would have been, I want to say it was 2016. It might've been 2017 when they had Sean Sweezum, but he got hurt. And so they lost him and knew that they were going to have to search for another kicker. They traded for the Jaguars, Josh Scobie. He gets hurt the first week of the preseason. They're like, okay, fine. They go out and get Garrett Hartley from the New Orleans Saints. He gets hurt the following week in a preseason game as well. So they have 3 injured kickers in the matter of 3 weeks, and they end up doing these, random tryouts to see who they can get in. And Chris Boswell comes in out of nowhere, ends up eventually landing the job. And here he is, the highest paid kicker in NFL history. And look, Chris Boswell has been dynamite. He's been, Justin Tucker gets all the love amongst kickers. Harrison Butker being a big leg guy.
They've done it for a long time. They've had a little longer.
Oh, no question. But Boz for 6 years has been as consistent as they come. So I'm glad they got the deal done there. And like being a kicker in the NFL, it's as you know, a very important position in this league, especially come postseason time.
Well, as you know, Boz is the king of Acrisure, and when you got to deal with the elements at Acrisure,
the Wizard of Acrisure.
When the winds swirl, the rivers combined at Acrisure Stadium, beautiful Acrisure. There is it's tough.
You got to hear Liev Schreiber say narrate that.
I need a little Leo Schreiber for Acrisure Stadium. Yeah, that's the stuff.
All right, let's touch on a couple quarterback battles that we've seen. So I had the fortune of attending Panthers camp last week. We got to see Baker Mayfield come and speak to the media for the first time, as did Sam Darnold. They have been splitting reps, alternating with the ones and the twos each day. They go with, so Sam Darnold got ones for the first day, and then they alternated on day 2 with Baker getting the ones. So they're trying to get that consistency with one group of receivers at a time from day in and day out. Honestly, early on, it looks like it's a pretty even split between the two guys. They are different types of quarterbacks. Darnold is obviously the bigger guy, a little bit more athletic, certainly is capable of a 35-yard touchdown run. But Baker has that, off script mentality, the gunslinger mentality, and is probably more accurate with the football overall than Darnold. So it's an interesting to see the two work. But Matt Corral has been the guy that has been first at practice every single day since the beginning of training camp.
That's awesome.
And he's been looking pretty good too. So, he doesn't appear to be moving his way to reps with the ones full time or anything like that. But it is just an interesting thing to note. They're not paying Baker very much. So look, if it doesn't work out, it's not like it's the end of the world. And they know they're stuck with Darnold either way. So if Matt Corral somehow did win this job, they'd probably love it. They'd be happy. And even though they're paying a lot of money on the bench, but I think Baker wins the job, but I do think his back is against the wall because Darnold at least knows the players and knows the system. And that's something Baker's got to get over in a short amount of time. Remember, he just got here a week ago.
Already predicting off of your reports that we will at one point in time see all 3 of those guys start a game for the Panthers this year.
That would be fascinating.
I'm predicting it. It's going to be one of those seasons. They'll start with Baker. Wow. They'll end up being 0-3. They'll go to Darnold. He wins 1, but then loses 2 straight or gets injured. They can't go back to Baker because Baker's kind of just lost and he's pissed. And then Corral gets a run, but then he gets tweaked. So they have to go back to Baker, and it's going to be a mess of a season. That's one of my bold predictions. Put it down right now for the year. All 3 quarterbacks will start at least one game for the Carolina Panthers.
Each of the past 3 years I've been, relatively high on the Panthers as opposed to like the general public.
Well, we know last year. We still remember.
Well, certainly last year. Last year was a disaster. Had them winning the division. They had Matt Rule winning Coach of the Year. Dear God. It's hard to envision the offense being worse, especially because they did get Ike Ekwonu with that first pick, and he is a stud on the line. Second year Brady Christensen.
McCaffrey's back.
And McCaffrey's back healthy. Second year wide receiver in Terrace Marshall. And so look, there are things to be excited about from that aspect. It's just, we just don't know what the deal is with the quarterback position. And that's so important here. We know the defense is solid, and their division is not that difficult. It's just, if you have turmoil at the QB position, it can go south so quickly for you, and we've seen that happen plenty of times throughout the years.
It'll be fun to watch. I tend to agree with you. I think Baker will be the starter day 1, but I mean, when Baker has
short leash, though.
And when you see the videos coming out, and I know you can't overreact to training camp videos, but he's under pressure, makes a bad decision, like throws an easy one up to a linebacker interception. That's the stuff that Baker just can't do. Take the sack and be like, look at my offensive line is shit. You know what I mean? Like that's what you got to blame it on. Like you got to protect. The problem is when you have a competition like the Panthers have right now, it's not even a competition like Mitch and Pickett in Pittsburgh, like we'll talk about. And this could maybe be the transition into it. The competition in Carolina is like, no. Darnold and Baker are literally playing for their NFL lives. They are playing for their NFL future, like the opportunity for them to still get paychecks in the NFL. Mitch is not. Mitch will have jobs in the NFL. Mitch is well liked. He's accepted easily into the role of the backup. He is not intimidating in any way, shape, or form. The media loves him. And if he gets beat up by Kenny Pickett, no one's going to be like, oh, well, there you go. Mitch Trubisky never going to play again in the NFL. That dude will be a backup for 10 more years. He's the next Chase Daniel. He really is. And And with Kenny Pickett, it's like, again, you're not out there every throw for your life. Every throw, it's like, oh, you're a rookie. It's okay. We're learning, and we're just happy you're here, and let's grow, let's get better. And yeah, you want to try to win the job because you're a quarterback who's doing that. But with Baker and Sam, every interception gets the play on social media because every interception for them is another notch on their, like, you're moving closer to the doomsday clock. These guys, Darnold will not be on a roster next year if it goes really, really south. And Baker may not either because they don't have the personalities and the look for the backup quarterbacks in this league.
It's a tough position for them to be in for sure. And to go kind of transition into the Steelers situation there. It's kind of fascinating. It's only been 1 week. You can never overreact to 1 week's worth of reps and production. But Mason Rudolph he's the clear front runner right now. Honestly, like it's kind of wild. Now a lot of people are still saying, Trubisky is the guy it's his job to lose, but Rudolph's not going quietly. I mean, he's been getting a lot of reps with the ones. In terms of the limited stats that have come out of camp so far, he has produced far better than both of those guys. Now, the benefit he has is 5 years in the Steelers system, whereas Trubisky and Pickett are both getting used to this thing. So look, a lot can change come preseason games when we actually see what happens
live fire
this week with the pads on. I think ultimately Trubisky wins the job. Rudolph second, Pickett firmly in the third quarterback spot, which is exactly where Ben was his rookie year. And you see where the chips fall at that point. There's no pressure on Pickett, despite him being more NFL ready than any quarterback in this draft class. I don't think the Steelers took him solely because we need him to be able to play this year.
Yeah.
But if they need him to play this year, then they can rely on that and comfortably know that they can at least put a guy in there that's capable and doesn't need to be taught, more of the raw initial things that an NFL quarterback learns. But it will be interesting. Trubisky and Pickett also are pretty similar type quarterbacks in terms of they're, pretty athletic. I'd say Trubisky's probably more so. But, it's an interesting battle to watch. It's exciting for the first time in my, Steelers fandom to see see how this is going to shake out and not knowing who's going to be there. And it does feel like this offense is going to be better regardless than it was last year, but it's so early on, man. And it's hard to tell, pads are on this week, so it'll be a better indicator. And, meanwhile, we've got our first preseason game coming up this week. So this is, we have NFL football for every week now up until February.
It's crazy and it feels good. I'll just say my final thing with the Steelers situation is listen, Mason Rudolph they can say all you want. You can, the numbers in practice, but we've seen that dude just completely fold in live game situations. Like
the Lions last
like a deck of cards because the dude is just not a gamer. So the one thing I'll say about Mitch is a gamer. I mean, Mitch always battles and some of the quotes you're getting from Mitch being free now the Bears for a couple of years. It's just so damning to how bad it got with Matt Nagy and the Bears after, his first year there. And so I agree. I think Mitch will win the job, but I do think if the Steelers, unless Mitch gets like injured, before in weeks 1, 2, or 3, I don't think you go to Mason Rudolph. I mean, if it's Mitch gets injured week 1, you go to Rudolph because you don't want to throw Kenny Pickett out there right away. Yeah, but I think if it's week 8, if it's any time after week 6, 7, 8, that's when you say, all right, kid, the season's now about the rookie and you go. So Rudolph's in a weird spot. And listen, if you're Rudolph's agent, if you're Rudolph, you're trying to promote that as much as possible. And you're going to take all the reps you can and as much preseason action as you can. Because, again, that's a guy who's trying to fight for his NFL future. Throw it, you know what I mean? Like, literally, does he get a job somewhere else in camps or on a roster somewhere if it's not with the Steelers? Possibly. I think people look at him as like a guy you could bring in as a spot one-game starter or a another.
Reminds me of like a Matt Moore kind of.
Yeah, an arm in the building. If you need another arm in the building, a guy to take reps. If you have a a veteran quarterback who you're maybe worried about if they miss a game or something, but it's important. It's just what makes some of these battles so unique. But I hope for, if I was a Steelers fan, I'd want Mitch to start, and ideally I'd want Mitch to start the majority of the year and try to win and make a playoff run, especially with the Browns as crazy as they are. And then give Kenny a whole year to just absorb, learn, and then you go in next year and you say, all right, it's fair game, Mitch versus Kenny, and may the best man win. And by that point you probably kind of like the Niners did. You let Kenny win and the job, and you trade Mitch for something. Mitch is on it last year of his deal. Get Mitch out of town and maybe get a third round, fourth round pick from him for a team that needs a backup or a spot starter.
Yeah, I'm actually curious because, I know we're going to do our full predictions in a few weeks down the road, so we don't want to give too much away. But I am curious to hear your perspective on how you think he'll do in the Steelers offense and how the Steelers team will look, because obviously, I can, being fans, we can be in a bubble sometimes. I'm curious to see what your perspective on how you think Mitch would fit in this offense and the Matt Canada system, and how you see him maybe, fitting in to this offense.
Well, I think that it's a opportunity for the offense to look very different. And that's what I'm excited about watching Steelers football this year, is because one of the things that's been so frustrating with the Steelers the past, 2-3 years, the end of Ben's career especially, is the dude couldn't be under center, and you're literally just in a shotgun every 4 wide, 3 wide, and there's just, no unpredictability to the Steelers offense. We're going to throw it 45 times a game, and Ben is going to hopefully hit on 1 or 2 big shots, and then we're going to dink and dunk down the field. And I think so I'm just excited to see how different the Steelers offense looks. I think if you build an offense, for Kenny Pickett, Mitch is a guy who can execute that offense really well. And Kenny can also slide into it, and it'll look different depending on their strengths. I think it's great. I think in that division, with the tough defense that Cleveland has, the really tough defense that Baltimore has, you need a guy who can be mobile, and Mitch is mobile, so he can extend plays. He can buy you time in the pocket, and with the wide receivers the Steelers have, that is a good symbiotic relationship as well. I said this, I live near Missouri on the Mississippi River, and I got a lot of Chiefs fans. My station that I work for, actually, we play Chiefs games on Sunday. We have a contract with the Chiefs, and they with a lot of Chiefs fans in this area. And one of the things that I don't think even Chiefs fans are talking about, it's a similar thing with the Steelers, is I'm beyond excited to see how different the Chiefs offense looks without Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill is one of those pieces where you don't just get another guy, now he fills Tyreek Hill's role. No. You had plays that were we only have these plays because of Tyreek Hill. So you remove those plays, and then with a creative, brilliant guy like Andy Reid, that just, now he has 25% of the playbook. He just goes, ooh, all new stuff, and with new toys and pieces. So in a similar way, the Steelers, Chiefs, those are 2 AFC, powerhouse teams that have looked certain ways for the last couple of years that I think are going to look different. And that's exciting in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And they've got guys that can stretch the field, young guys, Chase Claypool. George Pickens looks like a monster early on in this NFL preseason too. He might have been the steal of the draft at the wide receiver position as well. So I'm excited to see how these guys actually get time to get downfield. That'll be exciting to see for sure moving forward. A couple notes I wanted to touch on before we close out the show, Mark. And we got some unfortunate news here out of the Broncos. Wide receiver Tim Patrick tore his ACL.
No.
So he is now
out
for the season. So let's ride. It's going to be Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton as the primary targets there. Obviously, not as big of a hit as, having one of their top 2 receivers, but still that's a weapon there that Russell Wilson will not be having this season, unfortunately. Tough break there for Tim Patrick. Talented guy, especially out of the slot too. So we'll have to wait another year for that. The Bears announced that they are taking calls. Well, they didn't announce, but The
Leaked,
reports are that they are taking phone calls for their second-round offensive tackle, Tevin Jenkins from 2021, second-round pick. Obviously, a lot of people thought he could have slid into the first round that year. I remember thinking that he might have been a first-round pick. I believe I did mock him to the first round, if I remember correctly. Obviously, he got hurt last year. He missed the whole season.
Well, he showed up with a back injury. He had a back injury when they drafted him, and that was one of the concerns. Pace traded up for him. He cut Leno, who was not a great tackle, but a solid starting NFL tackle.
Sure, yeah.
In the hopes that you have this young guy who can be your future left tackle with your future quarterback. It seemed like that's what you do, right? You draft a quarterback, you go get the tackle to protect him. And he was a mess last year. And when he finally got healthy, the reports were that he just wasn't working out right. And he wasn't, competing well at the tackle spot. And they moved him to guard, and he had a really rough showing at guard. And this year was supposed to be that, hey, best shape of your life, all healthy, let's go. And apparently there's rumors that he's very immature and the Bears are not happy with it. And they're not happy. And remember, whole new regime. The only person who's safe, and he's only safe for a short time in a brand new regime, is the quarterback. Because he's a second-year quarterback, he's the only one who the Bears are tied to. You have a new GM, new head coach, all new staff. Fields was the only one. They're like, all right, we took this job because we like Fields and we're going to work with him. But if in 2 years Fields stinks and they can't make it work, that the coaching staff and the GM will be like, hey, we get our chance to go get our guy, right? That's how this game works. So a guy like Jenkins, as touted as he was, if you're just not gelling with the coaching staff, you're not gelling with the front office, who, reminder, their new front office, that GM Ryan Poles is a former NFL offensive lineman. He had a cup of coffee in the NFL, but was an offensive lineman out of Boston College. This is the thing he knows the most. And so I trust him. I trust Poles in saying that if this dude is causing more problems and now there's maybe a foot injury, then get what he can for him and move on. And that's saying something, because this Bears offensive line is bad, but they did just sign a couple veterans over the weekend, guys that, have starting experience in this league who could play multiple positions. So the Bears offensive line is a real concern for me going into this year. It's going to be a long year at the offensive line spot. One of the reasons why James Daniels letting go, getting rid of him is just still frustrating. You're welcome. And so it is as much as the Bears need wide receivers and they need some pass rushers, they really, really need upgrades of the offensive line. And they're possibly trading a once very high touted prospect who's only a second-year player. That just means to me it has to be something just not sitting right with this with this new regime and this talent. So I have to trust Ryan Poles at this point in time and just say, whatever happens, happens.
Yeah, it is unfortunate. I can't imagine they're going to get much of a return for him. Meanwhile, Roquan Smith continues to hold out. What do you think? Where do you think this situation is going? What have you heard anything from? Has Poles addressed this, or have they even discussed getting a contract done?
Well, here's the thing. From what I'm reading from certain sources, in people I trust in the Chicagoland media, there have been talks, and Poles has done him solid. He put him on the PUP list. So here's a guy that Roquan is 100% healthy, ready to go. And his GM puts him on the PUP list. Why? So he doesn't get fined for missing training camp. So that's a huge good faith move, right? That is, you like to see that. That is kind of cheating the system, but basically saying to the most talented player in your organization, and a guy who you absolutely, if you're the Chicago Bears, your history of being linebacker dominant, defensive head coach, you absolutely need Roquan Smith as a part of your future. He is a stud. And if you're going to trade a Roquan Smith, that is a multiple players and first round pick type of deal, like a huge deal you would need to give up for a guy like him. entering the prime of his career. So I think the deal will get done. I think the problem is a little bit for Roquan is there haven't been a ton of big middle linebacker deals done recently, except for like the Bobby Wagner deal. But that's a guy who's at the end of his career, has all these accolades. So how do you judge him versus a guy who's rising? I mean, maybe you look at the Darius Leonard deal, but they're different players, even though they play a similar position. So I think that's part of it with Roquan is a little bit of what's the precedent for Roquan Smith.
Yeah.
We know the precedent for the D linemen, the edge rushers. We know the precedent for wide receivers. You can't even know the precedent for corners. I mean, the corner market you saw this offseason, there was deal after deal after deal. You don't really know what the market is. So I think that's part of it. The Bears, I think, would be willing to reset the market and say, this is what we value Roquan at. Again, what did I mention? When you have a rookie quarterback, you should have money to deal with. The problem is Pace left the Bears in such disarray with bad cap decisions and moves that I think things are a little tight. So I think they're trying to figure out a way for Roquan to maybe get a really big signing bonus, and then that, can kind of contort some of the money so they can keep him. And maybe they're looking at years, maybe I'd imagine Roquan wants to be there a long time. The Bears probably want him for a long time. So what does that deal look like? I think it's good. I feel good that Ryan Poles put him on the pup, because that's like, all right, two guys, let's work together.
There's not animosity.
There's not animosity. We're not like just getting camp. You're under contract. None of that. This is your franchise player right now. I know Justin Fields, but Roquan Smith is by far the best player in your franchise. He is the future leader of your defense and someone you should look at as a Brian Urlacher type figure. Should be here for 12 years. And if all things go right, multiple Pro Bowls, all pros, and that type of production. So I feel it sucks he's not there. I'm happy because he can't get injured, but I would like to see a deal get done, and I feel positive towards it because they did him the solid to put him on the pup list.
I did notice that Eberflus had mentioned that he's likely going to move him to the will linebacker spot on the west or the weak side. That'd be interesting. I didn't know how I felt about it. I mean, it does make sense because a lot of offenses now are attacking that side because so many of the best defensive players are, stacking elsewhere. So to be able to kind of offset some of your other weaknesses on defense, I just, you do want him though, being the quarterback of the defense, and you want him wearing the green dot. So it will be interesting.
He will. I think that's one of those things too, where Eberflus,
maybe just playing around with ideas. Or
how much of that is stuff I don't know if I necessarily, we'll see. Again, once the Bears line up against the Niners, we're going to learn a lot. I mean, that's always, I know a lot about coaching changes. The one thing you can get excited about with coaching changes is that week one, it's like the amount of film you get to digest about, just like, oh, okay, that looks different.
This is what it's like. Yeah.
This is what it's like. Remember, Eberflus does run a different defense than, the Bears have been running for the past couple of years. So it's back to a little bit more traditional. And yes, Roquan is a little more undersized, and you look at him as more of a traditional kind of 4-3, maybe more of a weak side linebacker. As long as they have him as involved in the game plans as he's been, he's a tackling machine. He is an absolute sideline to sideline monster, and he plays the game the right way. You don't see Roquan Smith getting a lot of targeting calls, late hits, anything like that. He's got a good head on his shoulder. So, get that deal done.
Finally, James Washington suffered a Jones fracture.
Yeah.
And so that's like a hit to the Cowboys receiving core, kind of bringing a question into their whole receiving core in general. They are being depleted. They had the Amari trade. They get this injury. Michael Gallup is on PUP, I believe. So it's like, where do we go from here in terms of Dallas? This offense is coming off of being the highest scoring offense last year, believe it or not, per game. They're in trouble. Now, this is a team, though, that I think OBJ is waiting on the market. Like the Cowboys,
I didn't think about that.
And it would make sense. Like OBJ in Dallas would make sense. I think that might be something that's going to have to happen because Washington's going to be done for the year, and they lost Cedric Wilson, So they got it's
No,
Michael
Amari
Gallup
Cooper.
and
Remember,
CeeDee
Amari
Lamb.
Cooper's wearing a Browns uniform.
Right.
It's CeeDee and Michael. And one of the things, I would love to see them sign OBJ, because talk about
smart, right?
Talk about the times that. What kind of mixtape would his dad release when Dak's not throwing him the ball? You know what I mean? Like that
Yeah.
is talk
Dak's
about
too nice of a guy, though. He would never do that.
So much fodder for the morning shows, the Undisputeds and the First Takes. They would have a lot of fun with that. Yeah, it is. Listen, Dallas was going to take a slight step back this year anyways, because their defense just could not produce the way it did last year turnover-wise, right? But you had a feeling that their offense could be just as equally good, and in a weak NFC, maybe that equals itself out, right? This is a concern, because if Washington's your third, that's a great receiving core. That's a really great receiving core. But when Gallup's your two and your one is a guy we believe is a one, but we never seen him as a 1-1, and now you're kind of have this gaping open hole at the 3 for a team that very much loves to throw the football around and spread them out. Interesting enough. I trust Dak, though. Dak's a grown-up, and Dak can create relationships with receivers, and we've seen him do it in his career. I would love OBJ. I think that'd be so electric. Talk about storylines. But I think OBJ is just waiting, and he'll re-sign with the Rams when he's healthy. But we'll see. It's interesting. Yeah, it's a bummer for Washington, too, because he's a good player, and I thought he had a chance to, have a sneaky 600-yard, couple touchdown type of season in the high, passing offense that Dallas does.
Yeah, totally agree. Well, we can take a breath. I spent a lot of stuff today.
Tons of news.
Heck, a lot of stuff. Of course, there's going to be a lot more injury news and other things. Some players coming off a pup, going on it over this week of camp with the pads on. We have the game that Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne won't be participating in, and yet I'm still going to be watching because, damn it, it's football.
Who is it?
And
Jags versus?
It's Jags versus the Raiders this Thursday, and
okay.
we're probably not going to see any starters really for the Raiders either. That's it's the Hall of Fame game, so it's the bonus game. They're the only ones that are going to be playing for this preseason. So, but you just get to see guys competing for jobs. You get to see some football, and so I'm looking forward to that. That should be fun.
Absolutely. No, it's exciting times. As you said, we now have football games from now until post Super Bowl. And remember, the week after the Super Bowl this year is the XFL return. So look out.
True.
I didn't watch any USFL. I mean, if it was on TV, I watched a little bit of it. I couldn't get into it. There was empty stadiums and just nothing for me.
Well, I don't care if there's no attachment to program or player as like college football gives you, right? There's storylines and things about players that you're interested in seeing and programs succeeding in various spots. And then obviously the NFL, all these players and stuff. I just can't get into it. There's too much other good football to watch.
Yeah, agree.
Even though it's spring, I can't bring myself to.
The XFL will be interesting because I liked the XFL pre-COVID and it was doing okay. They had good crowds.
And it's very different.
And St. Louis had the team, and I'm really close to St. Louis. And the Battlehawks are back. I don't know if they're going to keep that same name. I hope they do, because
Battlehawks.
I went out and I almost bought Battlehawk merch. I was ready to adopt. I'm a Chicago everything, but now I live closer to only a little over an hour outside of St. Louis. And so, I could get behind rooting for the Battlehawks. I could become a hardcore sword with wings fan. That was the logo. It was a big broadsword with wings. It's like, this is insane, and I love it. So we'll see. But lots and lots of stuff to get to, and we will start putting our official predictions. We'll probably do that. I don't know, the week before the season starts.
Probably. Well, we might do the NFC 2 weeks before, then the AFC the week before.
There we go. I like that. I like that because each one will take an hour for sure.
Yeah. So we'll probably split those two.
Can we do the AFC
Meanwhile, we didn't
first?
discuss the Hall of Fame class, but I'll just say Devin Hester not getting on the first ballot was tough.
Don't worry, the Bears
I
will
know
be in the Hall of
he
Fame
was
game
really
next
bummed
year
about it.
because of him.
What's that?
Bears will be in the Hall of Fame game next year because of Hester.
There you go. That'll be nice to see for sure. He'll get it. He'll get it.
I want his intro to only be Jeff Joniak saying, "Devin Hester, you are ridiculous."
They're 100% gonna put that in there. They
that is
have
just
to.
every single time he went back.
Yeah.
That was Jeff Joniak, baby.
Yep. And then obviously the Super Bowl call, because that was just such a memorable. It's like everyone knew that was the year too where he just went off, and it's like everyone knows, like, you don't want to start the game off this way.
I remember where I was.
Does it in the biggest game.
I remember where I was. All that feeling. John Jorgensen was wearing his Vince Young Titans jersey. It was electric in my living room, and it all went. The rain killed me.
The rain. Well,
Rex Grossman,
Cedric Benson.
It doesn't matter that Rex Grossman played his college football in the state of Florida, where it rained all the time. Dude, as soon as it started raining, it's like he never played football in the rain before.
Yeah.
The hell?
Hey, Cedric Benson also couldn't hang on.
I got Cedric Benson's autograph on a Texas hat. He appreciated that. I went to Bears camp.
Wow.
I was at Bears camp, and I was like, "See, Benz, signed the Texas hat." It was like, "Eyes of Texas are upon you."
Very nice. All right. Well, I'm sure we'll have plenty more to discuss next week as well. So until then, watch some football, everyone, and we'll see you back here next week.